So we have cat, dog, employee, examples, main, and ostrich. All right, so let's go to here. Package. Come down Android. New class. Cat. Dog. Employee. Examples. Main. And ostrich. Get rid of all of those lads. These lads here.
Race condition.
What's it called?
Race condition.
Okay. So, right, so we're going to go to close off these lads. So dog, cat. So with examples. So we're going to go to static void ex1. Just go to main. All right, now, so what's this first one here? This is called the executor service. So, executor service, I'm going to hit, so I put in as a comment. Executor, executor, all one word, is an interface that creates and manages threads for any developer. Okay, so you first obtain an instance of the executor service interface, and then you send tasks to be processed. Okay, and executor service can take many tasks. Okay, a task is always going to be something, which will always do something. That implements the runnable interface. Okay, so these executors, okay, are what we use to manage our threads, and they can manage all of the tasks that are sent to the threads. Okay, so they manage all of the tasks that are sent to the threads. They'll manage deadlocks. What's that other thing called?
Oh, the race condition.
Race condition. It'll also take care of your synchronization. It'll also take care of your closing the threads. Okay, so your executor service, you can have loads of threads on a single executor service, and also you can, each one of those threads can have loads of tasks on it. All right, so you can have executor service. It could be managing 5 threads, and each one of those 5 threads have 5 tasks on it. That's 25 tasks. That could be all running at the same time. Okay. Now, so an executive service can take many tasks, which is always something that implements the runnable interface. Okay. Now, you use the executor factory method, factory class, sorry, to create instances of executor service. All right, so now, so we are going to create an executor for a single thread because they are the simplest ones. Okay, now the static void ex1. So let me just see. All right, so this is single thread execution. Now, this basically deals with one thread at a time, right? I think we do multi-thread execution when we come along later, but this is just basically doing one thread at a time. All right.
You're not referring to system thread there, right?
No, no. These are our own threads. Yeah. Okay. Executor services for our own threads. As far as I know, you can't use it with the system threads. As far as I know, but I'm open to correction on that. All right. So we're going to create one. So we are going to go executor service. I think that's spelled right. And I'm going to call that service is equal to null. There it is. And I'm going to create a second executor service. Service 2 is equal to null. Now, this service, okay, best way to describe it is this is our thread, you could say. All right, this is one to come to manage our thread. Right, so this is what we use. This is the object we use to manage our thread. And this is an object we will use to manage another thread. Now, if you want to manage multiple threads, something called a pool executor service, but we're not going to do those yet. Okay, so it's going to be simply one executor service is going to manage one thread. So this guy is going to manage one thread. This guy is going to manage another thread. Yes? Okay. Now, so we want to add tasks to this thread. All right? We want to add tasks to this thread. Now, make sure this is right. So how do we add tasks to this thread? Now, for our first start anyway, we have to put all of this in a try-catch block. Okay. And I'm going to put in a finally. Now, the reason I created these guys outside of the try-catch block, because if I didn't create them outside of the try catch block. If I create them inside the try block, I couldn't have them here inside the finally. Do you understand that? All right. So we create these objects outside of the try catch block. So we will then be able to access these objects outside the try block, as we will be closing them in the final block. Okay, so finally is usually for, do you remember when we were using the executor service, we could close them in the finally block, or when we were with try catch split before, you can close connections in the finally block. You can also close your threads in the finally block. All right, so we are going to create, so this is going to be what's going to be used for managing our threads. Okay, now what sort of threads are we going to create? So I'm going to say service is equal to executors, new single thread, executor. Now, so this is an executor service for a single thread. Okay, if you looked at them there was other ones. There was executors dot thread pool. Now a thread pool is the one if you want this executor service to deal with multiple threads. Well, we're going to learn how to walk before we can jump. We do have to know about thread pools. Okay, so we want the new single thread executor. Okay, now this is the guy we add the tasks to. Okay, so this is, so you have to say what type of executor you want. This is a executor for a single thread. If now executor, what this is all about, this is all about getting your threads to run, getting your threads to run and shutting them down, getting your threads to run and making sure that they don't clash with other threads. All right, so this is going to be a service for a single particular thread. Yes? Okay. If you want an executor for multiple threads, you would use, I think it's called, let me just see what it's called again. executors dot new fixed thread pool. Okay. You would use new fixed thread pool, which we will be doing. Okay. So now that's going to be for dealing with one thread. And I'm going to say service 2. All right, we'll leave that alone for a minute. So, right, now, so that's for dealing with a single thread. Okay, now, when you do this, service dot execute. All right, now, this is what creates your thread. First time you run it, this is what creates your thread. Okay, so service dot executes, what this does is it runs a thread, it creates a thread, and it puts a task on that thread. Okay, so this guy here, now the thread is still in the background, but a thread is created. All right, it's not, you can't see it there, it's created in the background. Not the system thread, it's a brand new thread you create yourself in the background. Okay, and what you put in here is something that implements the runnable interface. Okay, so service at execute. We're going to put in something so it takes in nothing and it returns void. So it's going to be very simple. This is going to be using our first executor service. That's our first task. Okay, that's our first task. Now, so it can take lambdas. So anything that implements the runnable interface. So I want to go to the dog class. I'm going to have dog implementing runnable. So implements runnable. So that means you're going to have public void run. And this is going to be dog run thread. So I'm going to add that to the service. So here's another task added. Service dot execute. As long as it implements the runnable interface. So all I have to do there is put it in here. New dog. Okay. So our thread is up and running here. That's our first task edit. So this is our first task. Okay. This is the second task. Added to thread. All right. Now I'm going to have another task. I go service dot execute. Now execute returns void and it takes a runnable object. Okay, that can be a lambda, it can be a class that implements the runnable interface. So I'm going to put in another one, and we're going to use a stream here. So takes in nothing, and it's going to put it in curly brackets, make it a bit easier for ourselves. So it's going to be stream dot execute, sorry, stream dot iterate. Now I need to import stream. So import java.utl.stream. Up here at the start. So we have stream dot iterate. And what are we going to do? We are going to do, make sure this is correct. So we are going to start off at 0. It takes a function, so it takes in an integer and it returns the integer plus 1. It's going to limit it to 10. We're going to have a for each at the end of it. I know a loop would be easier, but we just keep doing it because so we get familiar with them. And for each takes in I, and it returns in, I is plus I. So there is our three services. Okay, so there's our three tasks added to the thread. All right, so this basically creates a thread in the background. You're not directly creating a thread. Okay, it creates a thread that runs in the background.
So they run straight away after you call the
Yeah. Okay, so execute does run. All right, so I'll run it. So this is EX1. Okay, so we go here. So execute using our first executor service. Okay, then dog run thread, then it runs them all in a row. Now you'll notice here that it manages everything for you. You don't have the dog being created before this guy. You don't have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and the dog being created in the middle of it. Everything runs synchronously. See that? Previously, they were all over the shop. Now I'm going to create another service. Okay, I'm going to create another one. A finally. Okay, the reason I'm going to have a finally is because I want to close off all of these guys. Okay, now I didn't show you how to. Well, because these guys here can throw a what's it called again? That one. I forget the name of it. Hold on. It can throw a interrupt with exception. Okay, can throw an interrupt exception. Now, as far as I know, it can't throw an interrupt with exception with an executor service. I'm not sure if it can or can't. All right, so you don't need a catch block. So what you do is you put in a finally here, and the finally is going to close off these guys. Now I didn't show you how to do it in Java 7 because I forget how to do it. Because I think you basically, they were saying not to close them off. But it's relatively easy to close off threads by using these guys. Okay, so I'm going to create another service. So I'm going to go service 2. So I have service 2. Executor service 2 is equal to null. All right. So I'm going to have inside here. So if I go here, I'm going to say service 2 is equal to this exact same thing. Okay, so I am going to put in service 2 in the middle of it here. Let's see what happens. Service 2.execute. I'm going to say very simply, I'll put in command there, and I'm just going to say service 2 executing. Now, see how neat and tidy this makes things? Everything runs as you think it should run. This guy runs first, this guy runs second, this guy runs third, this guy runs fourth. Now, believe it or not, they still actually could be running all at the same time, right? So they could still all be running at the, so here you have 2 threads. That's a thread, that's a thread, all right? So you have 2 threads. They could still be running at the same time, but they're going to be displayed as running one after the other, okay? Because the executor service takes care of your layout. So you know this is going to run first, This is going to run second. This is going to run third. And this is going to run fourth. Is everyone with me so far? Yes? Yeah? As you can see it there, single thread execution using our first executor service, 1. Dog run thread, 2. Service 2 executing, 3. Then it goes from 0 to 9. Is that okay? So executor service is taking care. You see in the previous version, it was all over the place. All right? This takes care of all of your access. Someone has a microphone on. Okay. That's really strange. Do you hear the coughing on it? And then a baby crying. I can hear it again. Nice.
Check maybe Katie.
Ah?
Maybe Katie online.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Kathy could be online. Hello, Kathy, if you are. Or let me just say.
You can answer now.
Yeah. There's no need to answer if you are online, Kathy, but just hello if you are. Yeah, that's it. That's it. One of them is online. That's it. Hello. That's it. Someone's online. That's how it is. Yeah. Maybe someone is looking at us. That's 50 quid an hour to look at that. Anyway, so now this takes.
So that kind of it still runs any order, but
Well,
it shows the output and fixed output.
yeah, well, it shows the output in fixed order, but also it takes care of all of the things that shouldn't be accessing. All right. Now you can access stuff if you want to, but this kind of takes care of all of it for you. But trust me, it's much easier doing it this way, another way. This kind of takes care of everything for you. Now, if you'll notice, when I run it, see that little two there? Now, when you use the executor service, one thing is it keeps running, right? And you have to close it, okay? Right, so now, how do you close it? So that's what we have in the finally, all right? So what we do is service dot shutdown. I run it, but I still have service 2 opening. So I go service, that's my phone. That is me now. Dear Noel, I still haven't done my job and got you the Zoom. Right, so now, right, now I should have down there. I do it again. It runs now. So service.shutdown, that will shut down your service. Okay. Now, as I said, what happens in the background is executor new single thread executor. All right. So there is a thread created in the background, but you don't have explicit you don't have direct access to it. All right. This creates a thread in the background that you use this dude to access. To add a task to that thread, you just go execute. And that will add tasks to it. All right. Now, they'll run in order there. Fine. All peachy. All right. Now, ideally, what you'd want there, of course, is you would have one service, let's say, for creating your GUI. You'll have another service for connecting to your database and doing all your database stuff. You'll have another service connecting up to your files and doing all your file stuff. You'll have another service that's getting access from your user. All right, so there's your 4 separate threads. And you can be adding as you're going along. So you can call one service, let's say service GUI, service database, service file, service user. And as you're going along, you just add, if you want to do something with that service, you just go service.execute, blah, blah, blah. That's the way it works, okay? And you could have 4 threads operating at the same time. Now, you'd have to plan it out fairly carefully to make sure that if you are going to access another thread, there is a couple of things you have to do, but it makes it considerably easier to use. Because all you have to do to add a task to a service, .execute, that's it, okay? So that service, so let's say that one there, how many tasks does it have? It has, that's task 1, that's task 2, that's task 3. Now service 2's task 1 is going to come before services task 3. So let's say, right, so I'll say this again. This is the first task added to the thread. This is the second task added to the thread. So this is the first task added to new thread. And this is the third task added to older thread. All right. Let's just say you want to make, so let's just say that in order for the last task to execute here, let's say the last task is going to execute here. Now you don't want it to execute without this one having executed first. There it is. That's how you do it. It's very, 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 it's extremely difficult to do that without the executor service. You'd have to put in sleeps. All right. After this service here, you'd have to put in a sleep. After this service here, you'd have to put in a sleep. And then after this one here, you'd have to put in a sleep. And even at that, you're not guaranteed it's going to work the way you think it'll work. Okay? Jesus, that sounds fucking horrific. So it does. So the executor service takes care of all of this for you. So this guy's going to execute. This guy's going to execute. This guy's going to execute. Then this guy's going to execute. Okay? Now, they're going to execute to completion as they're going along. Okay? Now, there isn't enough. The thing about this is there isn't an awful lot of advantages of using this as opposed to normal programming. All right? Because think of it as one thing after another. The next step is not going to happen unless the previous step happens. So what's the advantage of using it? Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, there is ways around that as well. Okay?
One question here. You got started that finally, closing down the type of resource as well.
No, I thought you could, but you can't. Okay? The reason you can't is because these executor services do not implement. What was the thing it's supposed to implement then again? Oh, fucking hell. I should really know this, shouldn't I? Give me like chapter 6. Auto-closable. Okay? So, put in here. You can't use, so you can't use try with resources on executor service. As executor service does not implement auto-closable. Now, so what we're doing here is you have to shut them down. If you don't shut them down, so I'll show you that again. Your service is still using. Now, if you want to use that service again, if you want to add something else to it, then you don't shut it down. Do you understand that? So normally when we run code, it runs and then it finishes. What a service does, a service keeps running until you shut it down. So a service could be running continuously in the background. A system thread, guess what, is running continuously in the background. All right? By going service.shutdown, that means you're closing the thread. You mightn't want to close the thread. If you have a thread that is controlling your GUI, do you want to shut down that thread? Yes or no? If you have a service that's controlling your GUI, do you want to shut it down? No, you don't. You might want to shut down the service that creates your GUI, but not the service that manages your GUI. All right. If you look sometimes in your own machine, you'll see all these services running. Services, guess what they are? They're all threads. Actually, I think you can actually see them. Let me just see. Okay. They're all threads. All of them dudes. Okay. You have, now they're not files in themselves, they're threads. Okay, there's the threads that are currently running. Now there's an awful lot more than that. Yeah, they're all threads. That's what they are. So they're not files as such. They might be saved in files, but at heart they're threads. So a service, you see the word service, think the word thread. They're the same thing. There's all the ones running in mine. Now there's a lot more than that running. Okay. So now, thing is, when you shut down a service, all right, if you try to shut it down a second time, okay, why shouldn't be letting me? Okay, service 2 that shut down. No, try that. Okay, right. I thought it gives me a executor. Let's see. No, okay, I don't know. Anyway, you're supposed to put in a check to see if your service shut down. Okay, so there's a number of ways to check to see if your service is shut down. So one of them is if this way, if service dot is shut down returns a boolean. True if it's shut down, false if it's not. So if it's not shut down, shut it down. Okay, so if it's not shut it down, shut it down. Now, as I said, if your service is managing something, all right, because a thread always runs, there's nothing wrong with keeping it running. All right, if it's managing something, for instance, games run on threads. All right, they have to be constantly running. Something is happening all of the time. Each time I move the mouse, there's going to be a thread. Each time I click on the button, there's going to be a thread. Each time I right click, it's going to be a thread. All right. So if service is shut down, so what that means is, so this returns true or false. So so if it's not shut down, we're going to shut it down. Okay. There's no red button operating, it means it's shut down. And if you just want to check it at the end of it, so I say service is shut down, and I go plus service, oops, sorry, outside the if statement. So I'll say we're finished. Jesus, is it 20 past 3? Service is shut down, and we just say service dot is shut down. It should say true. Oh, bubble balls. Hold on, let me. No, it's not the if statement. So why is that not printing out? That is a good question. Let me just see. Okay. Oh yeah, finally runs before it. Yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah, so the final actually runs before it, but that would be correct. Okay. Come back to that tomorrow. Right? So service, it is services shut down, true. Okay. So we will do more on executives. Now, executive service is a fairly big section. We won't have this chapter finished by the end of the week. All right. But we're going to take our time with it. We're in no hurry. We should be more than half it finished by the end of the week. Because chapters 8, 9, and 10 aren't that long at all. So we'll be finished this well by the middle of March. By the word broad. So that could give us 3 months then of exam revision, which would be good to the middle of June. All right, so that's that done. So I'll stop that.